Hello, I'm Susan Sleesman, the Assistant Superintendent for Learning and Teaching in Bourne Public Schools.
And I'm Christina Caputo, the Director of Special Education and Student Services for Bourne Public Schools.
And we're here today to talk a little bit about our civil rights and mandatory training that we do every year.
That's right, and we're doing it a little differently because usually we do these at staff meetings, but this year people get to watch from the very comfort of their own homes as many times as they want.
And I am sure they're very excited about that, Christina.
I am sure as well. So, Sue, can you just talk a little bit about why we do this every year?
Civil rights is part of our rights as American citizens, and in Bourne Public Schools, we do not discriminate. We have an anti-discrimination clause that says, the Bourne Public Schools does not discriminate on the basis of age, race, color, sex, gender identity, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, disability, or homelessness. And what this really means is that every person in Bourne Public Schools is afforded the same rights as every other person, and we will not treat people differently because they have differences of any kind. And I believe that does include the population of students with disabilities.
Yes. What do we have in place for supports for students and or staff when it comes to bullying, teasing, and harassment?
We have many supports in place. First of all, harassment and bullying are both forms of discrimination, so it's forbidden. If we get reports, and we want all reports to come to our attention, if we get reports of folks feeling and students feeling like they are being harassed or bullied, we investigate those. We have reporting in the buildings. The principals are the ones who gather those claims. I believe you are...
I do the anonymous
You
ones.
do the anonymous
Yes.
claims.
Yes.
Sue Downing, our transportation director, will take claims with anything on buses and that sort of thing, and then turn those over to the building. And we investigate those to see if there is any bullying or harassment occurring. And we take that very seriously, as we do retaliation. There's a definite process that we go through. It's confidential. So that we're protecting the folks who are witnesses or making claims. And the first thing we do is make sure that anybody is safe when we get those kinds of claims. And you can actually look on our slideshow. The slides are 5 through 13 that really describe that process and all of the issues that are under the harassment and bullying umbrella.
And I know that if people disagree with the findings from any of those investigations, they can proceed with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's dispute resolution.
Absolutely,
So
and
that
I
there
have
is a
those
way.
forms in my office. If there are any time that somebody says, I'm not sure that was investigated properly, or I'm not sure of those findings, that is available to them, and they can actually go through me to get the proper paperwork to file that.
Great, thank you. So in terms of Section 504, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what 504s are. I know for me, when it comes to IEPs, it is 3 prongs that we're looking at. It's whether or not their student has a disability, and it's one of the Massachusetts 13 disability definitions that we use, and that they also are not making effective progress in the curriculum, and as a result of that require some form of specialized instruction.
Right.
But I know 504s are different. Can you talk a little bit about what makes a student eligible for a 504?
Where in special education there are specific disabilities, in 504 they are not that specific. They can range from sight, from hearing, from a health issue. It's limitless, really, the disabilities or maybe the perceived disability that someone might have that majorly affects a life function, and that's the definition for 504. If a person needs an accommodation, specifically when we're talking about students, if a student needs an accommodation to access the curriculum beyond what we offer in our district curriculum accommodation plan, which is afforded to all students, then we might look at the 504 process, because it's all about access and equity. And you know, if there's something preventing a student from being able to access a curriculum, we really need to look at that closely. And that's where Section 504 comes in. It's another legally binding situation that when we put those plans into place, teachers have to follow them as written.
You just reminded me, and I forgot to mention this when we were talking about bullying, teasing, and harassment, that in terms of accessing the curriculum or the environment, one of the things that we need to do as an IEP team for students with disabilities when it comes to bullying, teasing, and harassment is talk about whether or not their disabilities impact their social skill development and thus make them more vulnerable to bullying, teasing, or harassment, or to engage in bullying, teasing, or harassment behaviors. And the IEP team discusses that student and their disability and then makes a determination about whether they do need goals and objectives because they are more vulnerable, or if they don't, we just need to note that it has been discussed, but the finding was that they're not more vulnerable.
Yeah,
thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I forgot to mention that.
That's a good point.
And so 504 is a pretty in-depth process, and I know that if people want more information, they can refer to slides 14 through 18.
Absolutely. And we have a 504 handbook in the district as well that we're updating every year, making sure that we are reflecting all of the current regulations around it.
Great. And you're also the person for English learners.
Yes.
So could you talk a little bit about English learners and what that means here in Bourne?
Again, English learners, we have to be very cognizant of their ability to access our curriculum. Naturally, if we have students in our district whose their first language is not English, they need assistance in order to access our curriculum. We have an ELL instructor in the district who actually has a class with these students to help them learn English, because they are expected to progress as any other students are. So in the classroom, we actually, in Bourne Public Schools, have a sheltered English immersion program, and all of our teachers who have English language learners in their classroom should have the sheltered English immersion endorsement, because they learn special strategies on how to make sure those students are included in what's going on in the classroom and understand.
That's that SEI endorsement that so many of our teachers have participated in recently.
Yes, absolutely. And just recently, although this has always been, these students have always been on our radar, there is a lot of more attention being paid to our students who may be homeless or in foster care. Because again, these students may be bouncing around, and because they're going from one school to another, their continuity of education has been disrupted. We have to be very aware of that and make sure that they also have access to our curriculum. So there are a lot of things that teachers can do in the classroom to make those students feel valued and feel safe. And I'm happy to work with teachers on that. And there's more information on both English language learners and the foster care students on our slides from 19 to 22.
Excellent. Thank you. So the other civil right that comes up often when we're having this conversation and doing this presentation is students' rights when it comes to, as well as parents' rights when it comes to physical restraint.
Oh. And what do you mean by physical restraint?
Physical restraint is, and people can refer to slides 23 through 29 for far more detailed information, but a physical restraint is any direct physical contact that prevents or significantly restricts a student's range of movement. And so any time that is happening, or that has happened, we need to make sure that we are notifying a building principal and that a parent is notified. The building principal needs to be notified immediately within
Christina, you're talking about something over and above redirecting a student and maybe putting your hand on the student's shoulder.
Physical restraint is not briefly guiding a student or utilizing hand over hand to maybe teach them how to position their hands to perform a skill, nor is it briefly moving a student in order to redirect them from an unsafe situation.
Okay. How many instances of physical restraint do we have reported? in
We
Bourne
do not
Public
have
Schools?
have it happen a lot.
Okay.
Last year we only had 2 instances of physical restraint reported.
Okay.
It will vary year to year based
Sure.
on our student needs and how students are presenting. But we do have a lot of preventative measures in place for making sure that it is in fact our last resort.
Last resort only?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is there something else we need to know about students'
I think in
civil rights?
terms of civil rights, the remaining concept that we talk about all the time is confidentiality.
Yes.
And we do need to make sure that every staff recognizes that they are required to keep this information about students and student families confidential, and that they're
Yes.
only sharing it with people who need to have it. And that when they do share information with anybody outside of Bourne Public Schools, that they're doing so with written consent.
And let me just say, with confidentiality, when we are investigating if harassment and bullying cases, again, we keep that in mind as well,
Yes. The
on an
confidentiality.
as-need-to-know basis
Right.
only.
And then the other pieces are all of our responsibilities as mandated reporters. When it comes to working in education, every single one of us is a mandated reporter. And that used to be included in this training as well, but I know now there's online training that all of us are responsible for
Yes,
participating
absolutely.
in. That is very helpful in terms of speaking to when you should be filing and how to go about that process.
And that information is on the slides 30 to 32
Excellent.
on our slideshow.
Thank you.
It's important, I think, that everyone know that they need to really look at the slides carefully in order to fully understand what our civil rights in Bourne Public Schools. If there are questions, concerns of any sort, please see me. Again, Susan Sleesman. Email address is ssleesman@bourneps.org.
And I can be contacted as well, Christina Caputo, Director of Special Education and Student Services, and my email is ccaputo@bourneps.org. Thank you.
Thank you.